Welcome to Money Stories. If you feel like your weekly grocery bill has become a source of genuine shock, you are far from alone. From the cereal aisle to the dairy case, from the cost of a loaf of bread to the price of a chocolate bar, a profound and persistent shift is underway in the global food system. This isn't just about temporary inflation or a bad harvest season in one part of the world. What we are witnessing is a convergence of powerful, structural forces that are reshaping the very foundation of how we produce and distribute food. This is the global food commodity crisis, and a growing body of evidence suggests that the era of reliably cheap food may be over for good. For decades, consumers in developed nations enjoyed the benefits of astonishingly low food prices. This was seen not as a temporary boon, but as a permanent fixture of modern life. This affordability was built on a fragile, interconnected global system, a house of cards, perfectly balanced under ideal conditions. We grew food in specialized regions, thousands of miles from where it was consumed, relying on complex, just-in-time supply chains that operated on razor-thin margins. The fuel that powered this entire machine was cheap energy. Cheap oil meant cheap fertilizer, cheap tractor fuel, and cheap transportation. For a long time, it worked with eerie efficiency. It allowed for an incredible variety of foods to be available year-round, divorcing our diets from seasons and local climates. But that house of cards is now collapsing under the weight of multiple, simultaneous crises, revealing the vulnerabilities we had papered over with efficiency. The first and perhaps most immediate shock has been the energy crisis. The conflict in Ukraine sent shockwaves through global energy markets, but the impact on food is even more direct. Russia and Belarus are titans in the global fertilizer industry, being major producers of potash, ammonia, and urea. Sanctions and supply disruptions have created a massive shortage, sending fertilizer prices to record highs. Why does this matter to your grocery bill? Fertilizer is not an optional input. It is the very lifeblood of modern high-yield agriculture. Without it, crop yields plummet. A farmer facing a 300% increase in fertilizer cost is faced with an impossible choice: use less fertilizer and produce a smaller harvest, or go bankrupt trying to afford it. Either outcome leads to the same result: less food on the global market and higher prices. Furthermore, farming itself is incredibly energy intensive. Tractors, harvesters, irrigation systems, and the transportation of goods all run on diesel and gasoline. The entire logistics network, from the farm gate to the shipping container to the delivery truck, is fueled by oil. As the price of fuel climbs, it gets baked into the cost of every single item that arrives on a supermarket shelf. This isn't a one-time event. It's a sustained cost-push inflation that reverberates through every step of the food chain. This energy-driven crisis is then supercharged by the escalating impacts of climate change. The stable, predictable weather patterns that modern agriculture depends on are vanishing. We are now living in an era of constant climate disruption. Consider the past few years. Paralyzing droughts have scorched wheat fields in the American plains and Canada's prairie, two of the world's most important breadbaskets. Historic heat waves have withered fruit orchards and stunted vegetable harvests across southern Europe. Conversely, catastrophic flooding has wiped out crops in China, Australia, and the Midwest, drowning entire seasons of work in a matter of days. A warming ocean is devastating fisheries and aquaculture, disrupting marine ecosystems that communities have relied upon for generations. These are not isolated incidents, they are the new normal. Each disaster creates a local shortage that ripples through the global commodity markets, pushing prices for staples like wheat, corn, and soy ever higher. Climate change acts as a threat multiplier, making already volatile markets even more unpredictable. It is no longer a future threat. It is a present and active driver of food inflation, systematically reducing the amount of food the world can produce each year and introducing a permanent risk premium into the price of everything we eat. Compounding these production challenges are severe breakdowns in the supply chain that moves food from farms to ports to your home. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the breathtaking fragility of our globalized logistics network. Lockdowns led to labor shortages at every critical node. Not enough truck drivers to move goods, not enough port workers to unload shipping containers, not enough processing plant workers to package meat. This created monumental bottlenecks that the system is still struggling to recover from. The price of shipping a container across an ocean skyrocketed by over 1,000% at its peak. While those extreme costs have receded somewhat, the system remains brittle and susceptible to new shocks. Geopolitical tensions, like the attacks in the Red Sea, can force ships to take longer, more expensive routes overnight, adding cost and delay. This logistical friction is a permanent tax on the movement of goods, and it is a cost that is ultimately passed directly to the consumer. Furthermore, this just-in-time model, which held inventory costs down for retailers, is being re-evaluated. Companies are now looking to build resilience, which often means holding more stock and diversifying suppliers, actions that also come with a higher price tag that will be reflected on store shelves. The efficiency dividend we all enjoyed is being replaced by a resilience cost. Finally, we cannot ignore the fundamental laws of economics, supply and demand. On the supply side, as we've seen, multiple forces are constricting the amount of food available. On the demand side, the global population continues continues to grow. Furthermore, rising wealth in developing nations leads to changing diets, with more people consuming more resource-intensive foods like meat and dairy. It takes far more grain, water, and land to produce a pound of beef than it does to produce a pound of wheat. This rising demand for higher value protein places an even greater strain on the global commodity system. We have more mouths to feed, each seeking a more diverse and resource-heavy diet. At the exact moment our ability to produce the base ingredients for that diet is under unprecedented threat. The math is simple and brutal. Demand is rising while supply is faltering. The inevitable result is higher prices that are unlikely to reverse, because this demand is structurally embedded in global economic development. So, is there any hope? Will prices ever go back to what they were? The unfortunate truth is that the conditions that made cheap food possible have likely vanished. The trifecta of cheap energy, a stable climate, and hyper-efficient globalization is broken. We are transitioning to a new era, an era of scarcity and cost. While some price spikes may moderate, the baseline cost of food is expected to remain permanently higher than it was just a few years ago. This is not a bubble. It is a fundamental reset. What we considered normal is, economically speaking, history. This new reality demands a new way of thinking from governments, businesses, and from us as individuals. It means governments need to invest heavily in climate-resilient agriculture, support for local food production to shorten supply chain, and research into sustainable farming practices and alternative foods. For us as individuals, it means becoming more conscious consumers. Wasting less food is no longer just a moral imperative. It's a critical financial necessity. Supporting local farmers markets can sometimes provide more stable pricing and certainly provides more community resilience. Growing even a small portion of your own food, whether in a garden or a windowsill herb box, reconnects you to the reality of its value and insulates you slightly from market shocks. The global food crisis is the defining challenge of our time. It is a complex web of geopolitics, climate science, economics, and logistics. Understanding that this is a structural, not a temporary problem, is the first step toward adapting to it. The era of cheap food is over. The question now is how we build a more resilient, sustainable, and fair food system for the future. If this deep dive into the forces reshaping our world has been valuable for you, please do us a favor. Hit that like button to help others find this content, subscribe to Money Stories for more clear-eyed explanations of the economy, and let us know in the comments, how has the rising cost of food changed your habits or your outlook? We want to hear your story. Thanks for watching.